Welcome to Wrestling with Heart, a podcast looking at pro wrestlers giving back to their community. Join me, Stanley Carr, as I interview wrestling's hottest names who use their platforms as entertainers to raise awareness and do community service. Hello and welcome to another edition of Wrestling with Heart. This is the show where we talk with professional wrestlers and professional wrestling personalities about their lives in and outside of the ring, as well as doing acts of charity work, community service, volunteering, and spreading positivity. We're all about the positivity here on the show. And with me, I've got a very special guest. He is the brother of the late professional wrestler Chris Candido. I'm with the one and only Jonny Candido. Welcome, Jonny, to Wrestling with Heart.
Hey, what's up, brother? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Let's talk about your childhood and upbringing. You're from New Jersey. What was it like growing up in that part of the area?
So when people think of New Jersey, I think they think like big cities, crowded people. But me and my brother grew up across the street from the beach, so we were pretty much like beach bums. So growing up here was great, every day. And growing up with a big brother who was a professional wrestler, in the summertime we'd be wrestling in the water, throwing me and all my friends over waves. And growing up with my brother was a blast, man. He was always so cool. And it's funny, even when we were little playing wrestling in the backyard, I would be like Big John Studd and he'd be Doug Summers, and he'd always put me over.
Wow.
Or he'd be like Kamala, and when he was Kamala, he'd give me the nerve pinch and kick the shit out of me. But growing up with my brother was great, man. He always like took me around with him, and he was wrestled, hung out. He was the man.
So he was already wrestling by the time you were born.
Yeah, so just about, like, he became just like one track obsessed with wrestling and training, and like that's it, right? So he started going to the Monster Factory around like even before that. He was already going to shows, setting up rings, taking bumps when he's like 11, 12 years old. When he was 13, he was at the Monster Factory, and he wanted to have wrestling in our town. And he went to a town council meeting and had this whole proposal, and there was no way they would let us do it today. But back then, he was able to get wrestling in Marucci Park in Spring Lake. He got the ring from the Monster Factory, and Bam Bam Bigelow he's 9 years older than my brother. So, my brother was 13. Bammer would have been 22. Bammer's from like 5 miles north of us. Balls Mahoney, his real name's John. He was my brother's age. So there was all like up and coming wrestlers and like some kids on the show, and my brother would have these shows, and they would donate the money to like they'd find a charity and donate the money to charity or something like that. They'd like pass around the can to everyone. So yeah, he started running and promoting his own shows when he was 12, 13, 14, 15.
Wow, yeah.
And it just became like he just had blinders on, you know what I mean?
Yeah, like that young, he was obsessed with wrestling. He just was hooked right away.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't think I've ever loved anything in my life as much as my brother loved the sport of professional wrestling. And like I said, when he would, like, again, before he even had a license anything, he would tell my mom that he was sleeping at his friend Scott's house. His buddy Scott would tell the mom they're sleeping here. They would take a bus, go to Brooklyn, and wrestle at like Brooklyn indie shows in Brooklyn. Get on a bus and come back. And that's insane. They were like little kids doing this stuff. So yeah, just totally one track minded. The only other job he ever had. So like I said, we grew up across the street from the beach, and during the summer they call us locker boys. When you're like 12, 13, 14, 15, you can work at the beach, sleeping off the steps and like shit like that. So he would like take all his little money that he'd make during the day as a locker boy and, buy gear and new stuff. And yeah, just totally. And then as he got older, 15, 16, 17, became obsessed with training, lift heavy every day. That's pretty much was his focus: lifting, training, wrestling, and he was, no, it was just super cool. It was really awesome growing up with him. Our childhood was like pretty much idyllic. I have a funny story. You
Yeah.
ever heard? You're younger, but you know the wrestler, the Great Muda.
Yes.
He
Legend.
spit the right.
Mm-hmm.
So my brother used to stalk around the house. He'd go and get the food coloring from my mom's pantry. He'd put some green, normally food coloring, in his mouth and stalk me around the house. And I'd come around the corner and he'd Muda missed me, right? So on the day of one of our sister's baptisms, I get my suit. So our house was 4 floors, and the fourth floor is his, right? And he had like a hangout room, and then he had like another room. Like as a kid, his room was it was like Mecca to me. So it's about to be my sister's baptism. I get in my suit and everything, and I go running up the stairs to show him how nice I look. I open his door. As soon as I open the door, he covers me in the green Muda mist in my suit. And he's like, "Oh, dude, mom's gonna freaking kill me." He like picks me up, washes all the green Muda mist off me, right? So again, this is probably I'm 7, he's 17. Nobody knows that he got my suit. A couple days later, I went and got the food coloring. I climbed up there, I got it. I ran up into his room, busted the door open in the middle of the night. He's in bed. I see 2 heads pop out of bed. Him and some chick. He was like making out with some chick in the bed. And I ran over and went and spit the food coloring. A tiny bit got on him, but it all got on her. And I
Oh
booked it.
no. Oh
I
no.
went down his stairs, the other stairs, and he caught me on the porch and kicked the shit out of me.
Oh
But
gosh.
but yeah, we always tell that story. Um,
Wow.
it was worth it because the ass kicking I took that day was worth it because I had stories, forever about that. We'd always laugh about it.
That's
There's a
hilarious.
little tiny bit got on him, but it covered this chick Dana.
Jeez.
And
I'm so sorry that happened to her. Wow.
well, yeah, I'm sure she was like, "Who's this crazy kid running up here spitting blue shit in my face?"
Goodness.
But
Yeah, okay, so it seemed like he was really into wrestling from such a young age, wanted to do it, and I know you were trained under him too. Were you a fan? Did you become a fan on your own? Did he get you into it? How did you get involved with professional wrestling?
so like me and him were like always together. He went when he was in WWE. I was a little kid running around the locker room in WWE. When he was in ECW, same thing. And I just figured that when I got old enough, I'd be a wrestler too. So I'll say around like 19, 20, I started getting in the ring before matches, taking bumps. And then my first match, it was just the two of us. We drove to Rochester and we get to the building and he's like, I don't really know any of these people. I'm just gonna wrestle you tonight. I'm like, is that cool? He's like, yeah. Just keep your ears open. For the finish, I'll miss the diving headbutt, feet up for a chair shot, 1, 2, 3. I'm like, okay. So I just kind of had my first match just on the fly with him. And then I got comfortable. I never had like official training sessions per se. It was kind of like on the job training. Like, I remember like when he'd be like, boom, duck the clothesline, rolling suplexes. I remember when I first took the rolling suplexes, you're lifted up in the air and your instinct is to like get to a base. So I like got to an amateur wrestling base. He just grabbed me. He's like, just tuck your chin and go with it. I'm like, okay. So then he hit me with 3 rolling suplexes. He did it again. Like again, everything was just kind of like
Repetition,
learn.
repetition. Yeah.
Yeah, just learn on the fly. I think my first, I'm gonna say around 7, 8 matches were against my brother. Just like learning
Mhm.
from him. And then I started wrestling John balls, and like it's a lot easier working with guys that and then that's how I kind of got into the business, just by working with them and then getting more comfortable in the ring and everything.
So when you first started, or just when you started like watching wrestling, who were like some of your favorite people to watch and idolized?
it was kind of like whichever way my brother went, I went, like because I thought he was the man too. But um, I love Demolition. I love Legion of Doom. Um, as a singles, I think Ric Flair was always my guy because my brother loved Ric Flair, so I was a huge Ric Flair fan. I'm trying to think if there was anyone I really was like crazy for. It was more like for some reason I really freaking like Demolition. They were like my yeah, just for some reason I love them. Like looking back, like Rick Rude was really good. Obviously, Tito Santana. I got to work with him later on. A lot of the guys that I saw growing up, I got to work with later on the Indies, which was like pretty cool.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I really like Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Those are the guys that I really liked. I like the guys my brother liked, Bob Backlund. Um, the guys who could go. I never loved like the big John. Well, I did like Big John Studd, but I was never like a big fan of like the Andre the Giant or something. I like the more the quicker kind of guys. That was kind of
The high
my
flyers, the cruiserweights, the smaller
yeah,
wrestlers.
yeah. I guess so. I would say yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned a variety of people. That's really good. Demolition and Legion of Doom are two of the most iconic tag teams of all time with the face paint and the gear. Is just so iconic.
Yeah, I think like that's probably what stuck out to me because like my brother was also a big fan. A lot of wrestlers too are a big fan of the band Kiss.
Mm-hmm.
So my
Yep.
brother was a fan of Kiss, so I was too. And I guess the face paint, everything, something about the Legion of Doom, I just really liked. And then, again, once I started getting older into my teens, I started going with him to the different shows and, you know, meeting all the guys, hanging out. So,
You guys ever
yeah,
were you guys ever a team together, like
yeah,
tag team?
yeah. We tagged a couple times. When I like first started, I would, I'd manage him. If he was a heel, I'd be his manager, freaking trip the guy, do whatever. He would get me involved to be, to get more comfortable. Man, I really did a number on him. I remember one of like our first, like we started like one of our first angles. I think our first angle ever. I was doing a run in on him in Sandman's match, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what we were gonna do is I was gonna take the cane from Sandman, go like I'm gonna cane Sandman, but turn and cane my brother, right? And then me and Sandman were gonna do the beers together, and then whack it against our heads. But then he was gonna cane me.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I remember my brother saying this was at the Elks Lodge in Queens. My brother was like, when you take when you get the cane, he's like, don't swing it like a baseball bat. He's like, swing it over the top, whack me on the head. It'll make that cool sound. I'll sell it. It'll be great. I'm like, all right, cool. When I get in the ring and I get the cane in my hand, I forget all that shit and I swing it like a baseball bat and whack him right across the face. So he's got
Oh,
like a stripe across the face. And we're driving back. He's like, "Oh, dude, you did so good tonight." I'm like, "Oh, bro, like, I'm like, I kicked the crap out of you tonight. I feel so bad." He's like, "Nah, it's all right." So then the next night we were going to do a pull apart, and so before this is like I'm around 21, 22. I I wanted to be a boxer, so I trained in boxing. I was like, if things had gone a different way, I would have gone pro in boxing. My brother gave me the talk. He's like, "Oh, you're gonna get Parkinson's, don't rattle your brain, whatever." So I was always boxing, boom, 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 boom. So for the second night in our pull apart, we got face to face. He pushed me. I went boom, 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 and I hit him with a three-piece right in each of his eyes. So now the dude's got a stripe across his face and then two big black eyes. And I remember later that night, I felt so bad. We were back at his house, and he's like, "Man, you did so good tonight." And I'm like, Cook. I'm like, I feel so bad. I'm like, give me a black eye. Give me a black eye. I kept like needling him to give me a black eye until finally, after me bugging him for, he's like, "Johnny, I'm not going to give you a black eye." I'm like, "Do it." He's like, "All right." And then he punched me in the face. And the two of us were walking around town with black eyes. So,
wow.
uh, Yeah, that was my introduction into the business. And then me and him built that feud, and we ended up having a cage match that was really kick ass. So yeah, I pretty much grew up in the wrestling business.
Yeah, definitely grew up literally in the locker room.
Yo, listen to this, right? The first time I was on TV, my brother had just gotten to ECW. You remember the BWO, the Blue
Yeah,
World Order?
yep. Stevie Richards,
So
Hollywood
yeah,
Nova, and Blue
yeah,
Meanie.
Steve, yeah. So during this time, the ECW arena had they had a wrestling ring in the back. Like the locker room was like this big expansive room,
Hmm.
and then in the back there was a wrestling ring. And this me and my buddies are in 8th grade, and we had our own little backyard wrestling federation.
Hmm.
And but for our promo pictures, we would go to the locker room ECW ring and take pictures of ourselves and mess around. And we bring our gear bags with us for to take pictures or again for our backyard shit. And I remember like that night, like Stevie and Nova and Blue Meanie, like, what does Shawn Michaels wear? What does Diesel wear? They're like
Hmm.
digging through all our bags. We're like, dude, wear these gloves. Put this bandana. Wear these glasses. They're like, how about all you guys? I had a bunch of my friends with me. Like, how about all you guys come through the crowd carrying BWO signs, and then hop the rail and come around the ring with us. I'm like, all right, yeah, guys, let's all do this. So there was like 7 or 8 of us, a couple of my friends and some other people he recruited, and so I don't know if it's a pay per view or just TV, but I've seen it on TV. It's on the rise and fall of ECW. But
Hmm.
anyway, you see all these BWO signs coming to the ring. I'm one of them. I'm carrying the BWO sign. I go to hop the rail. I'm kind of a chubby kid, and I fall flat on my face. I get back up.
Oh.
I'm mortified. I get back up carrying my sign. Da 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 da. Um, Go back to the locker room, just mortified. As soon as I stepped through, I see my brother, Taz, Luis Piccoli. They're like, "Oh, kid, you took your first bump on TV. Yay." I was so mortified, dude.
Ah,
And
I,
they're like, you got to pop too. I was like, some dude grabbed my leg. It wasn't my fault. Like I made up now I can laugh about it, but I remember when it happened, I was so embarrassed. But yeah, I was like 14 when that happened. So yeah, I like literally grew up, running around the locker room and
I'd imagine you'd be starstruck when you're seeing all these guys, like you just mentioned, like Taz and Shawn Michaels and Diesel, Kevin Nash, all these guys, coming backstage. You're like, oh my gosh.
but you got to also, for me, not really, because I'd grown up around. Like I remember the first show I ever went to. I was like, if I was like my brother was 17, I was 7. Terry Funk versus Eddie Gilbert were the main event. Like my brother worked Sabu. Like I'd seen all these guys before, so it wasn't really a
Hmm.
big.
Big
Like
deal.
I was never starstruck by anyone because always just went with them everywhere. So like it wasn't. I I remember his first night in ECW. There was a birthday party at my aunt Kathy's house. And I remember I didn't know my brother left WWF, and my brother pulled up with um, my mom calls me. She's like, Johnny Cook. Cook's a nickname that when I was a kid I couldn't say Chris when I was a baby. I called him Cook, and it just kind of stuck. Mom's like, Cook's outside in a limo. He wants to talk to you. He's like, yo, dude. He's like, I left WWF. I'm going to this ECW. I'm really nervous. You want to take a ride with me to Philadelphia? I'm like, yeah, sure, let's go. So I hop in the limo with him, and we drive to the ECW arena. And then we see all these fans looking, and I was nervous. I'm nervous that they weren't gonna know who he was because he's not Skip from WWF. I'm like, are
Hmm.
they gonna know who he is? Like I was so nervous. And then we walked backstage and started seeing familiar faces, and I was like, and then when he you know, came through the curtain, the place went crazy. I'm like, all right, they know who he is. And that night was the that scaffold match where Dreamer and Brian Lee, where Dreamer knocked
Hmm.
Brian Lee through the tables off the scaffold, and I was
Hmm.
like, whoa, what the hell? Because I'd never seen anything like that at WWF. So yeah, I was like all about ECW at that time. What was funny that the chatter amongst like up, so I was watching it from the Eagles Nest where all the boys are, and the two of them are going back and forth, um, fighting on the scaffold, Brian Lee and
Hmm.
Dreamer, and everybody's like, huh, I wonder who's taking this bump. Like obviously Dreamer, they're thinking. And then when Brian Lee took it, even the boys were like popping, like, holy shit.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like everybody was going nuts, not just me, because everybody just figured Dreamer was just going to take that bump.
Right.
Um, but yeah, again, I grew up around it, and
yeah, like back then, it was like one of those early, like the internet was it just became a thing, and it was like one of those instances where, um, there were like whispers or rumors of like who was going to jump ship to different companies, like during the Monday Night War era, like with the Scott Hall and Kevin Nash leaving WWE to go to WCW. Your brother left WWE to go to ECW, and
yeah,
like it was really an exciting time to be a fan.
yeah. Like for me, like I just thought it was super cool just because we had like I said, like we just had run of the locker room, and we would let me go bother Sabu for a little bit. Let me go run over, hang out with Mustafa. Oh, New Jack needs me to go help him find weapons. I remember like when they went down to Florida, I think it was like for like heat wave or something. The brother's like, dude, you got to come. He's like, because this was like shortly after he had gotten to the company. He's like, you've been to every show with me. You got to come to Florida. So I'm in Florida with ECW. I remember we're at this sushi joint, and there's all the boys at the table, and I'm sitting between Tracy Smothers and Tommy Rich, and both of them are. Tommy Rich is like, hey waitress, he's like, give me and my kid here a beer. Waitress was like, sir, he's like 14. He's like, all right, well, bring me two. And then he's like, give me a shot of Jack Daniels. And he took the Jack Daniels and dumped it in my Coke.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just had a blast hanging out with all those guys. But what was funny is, right, so my brother had bought this house, this really beautiful house. So for me, this is around sophomore year, right? And he had a sports car, and he had a SUV. And now I'm getting to that age where I'm more interested in like chicks and partying and stuff. So, all right. So I remember when I was like 13, 14, and I'd be hanging out with my brother, he would order food, and then I'd watch him sign. He's like, Johnny, if you're ever here with your buddies, and you want to order food, call this place. It was like DoorDash before DoorDash.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, call this place. When the guy comes, sign the paper, and the guy will bring you food. I'm a little kid. I don't know what the hell a credit card is. I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, this guy he's such a wrestling fan. He brings my brother food for free for autographs, right? So my brother would be gone. And when he was gone, I'd have parties over his house, right? And there'd be people sleeping on couches and stuff. Wake up in the morning, I'm like, guys, there's this guy that will come here and deliver us food. All I got to do is sign on this paper for this guy. He's such a wrestling fan, you wouldn't believe it. So everybody's ordering different stuff. So I do this over and over and over. And then one day he's like, dude, he's like, there's like $12,000 worth of charges on my credit card. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, to go for it. I'm like, yeah, the food guy. He's like, yeah, the food guy. I'm like, what do you? I'm like, he's like, it's not free, you idiot. He's like, it goes to my credit card. He's like, luckily he just made me and my friends come paint his fence. I thought the guy just came and brought him food for autographs. So I like read up a $12,000 bill on
Wow,
his DoorDash, just thinking,
that's crazy.
But we had a lot of later on, we had a lot of fun. Me and my friends throwing parties at their houses when we didn't think they were there, or when they were on the road. I'd be like, yeah, I'm gonna stay back, and I'll take the dogs out and everything, and then we'd have, I'd have like half the freaking high school over, until one day he called me. I had a friend's sweet 16 party. It got busted by the cops, and I'm like, my brother's out of town. Let's go to his house. So we go there. I open the door. I walk in, and he's sitting there reading the wrestling magazine. He's like, yo, man, what's up? I'm like, oh, hey. I'm like, I was just gonna hang over here, but since you guys are home, I'm just gonna go back to mom and dad's with my friends. He's like, okay. The next morning he calls me. He's like, dude, what the hell goes on here when I'm not here? he's like 100 people all came to my house. He's like, people are walking up with kegs of beer. Guys are coming up with guitars and dogs are running around my front lawn. He's like, to scare them, I turned all the lights off and I took my shirt off and I did push-ups and then I flung up in the driveway and yelled at all of them. He's like, but dude, seriously, he's like, you can't have like 100 people in my house when I'm not here. I'm like, all right, So he kind of put the kibosh on that.
Wow.
But yeah, growing up, growing up wrestling was fun, for both of us, man.
Yeah, it definitely seemed like you guys had a lot of fun. It was an exciting time. The 90s was just it was a wild time. It seems like it was an exciting time, lots of fun. Uh there just wasn't seen there just hasn't been like a time like that since, really, with all, you have three major companies, lots of alternatives and entertainment, and you got to be at the height of
Yeah,
it.
yeah, it definitely felt different back then, and it's weird. Like as I like, as I'm thinking forward, like my favorite time, obviously, was when I was an active wrestler on the road with my brother. I have a bazillion funny stories, of just us. But that like I had so much fun doing it. I loved it so much. But yeah, it's different when you're in wrestling world. It seems like that's the only world that's there. It's hard to explain.
Hmm.
Like growing up in that and then becoming a wrestler. It's almost like it's almost like you're in the mob. You live by like a different
Yeah.
code of rules. It's like like there's unwritten rules that I knew since I was a kid. You have to shake everyone's hand when you arrive at the building. Say goodbye to all the boys when you leave. Like there's all these different things that you have to do that I just grew up getting schooled on. So yeah, it was it was really cool. Growing up in the business and then being a professional wrestler and doing you know getting to do some cool things myself that I wanted to do in the business, and then I kind of got forced into retirement, which I think was the right move. Just to like skip ahead a little bit, like my family didn't like the business. They were very like they didn't want my brother to do it, but they made peace with what that's what he was going to do because that's all he ever cared about. But with me, they're like they didn't want me to do it. But after he passed away, then it was like my mom was like, Johnny, like if you do this, I don't know what I'm going to be able to do. Like she's like, I can't go through it again with another son. So it's like this is after I had worked with Balls and Axel in WWE, and I was hanging out there as an extra, and Balls was like, me and you are going to tag. Me and you are going to tag. I talked to Shane. It's on. Me and you. Me and you. And then I had my parents in the other ear. And so it was so like push and pull, So I finally, I did what my family wanted me to do and, and, and left the business. I came back here and there, you know what I mean? But I think I like officially retired in like '08 and just happened to like fall into like a really awesome career right after. So I think it's my brother kind of pulling the strings. Oh, like when the two of us would drive, we would very rarely have serious conversations. We joke about guys, talk about lifting, goof on each other, whatever. But I remember like one day, he's like, what are your goals in this business? Like, what do you want to achieve? I'm like, I'd like to, I'm not like crazy like you. When my brother was 23, he was a champion in WWF. I'm like, I'd like to get to WWF, before I'm like 25. And I want to work the ECW arena. Those are like my two goals. And like within a year of him dying, I'd already done both of those things, So it's kind of like I feel like he sped me up, and I won an NWA title, which I told him I thought that would be really cool too, since he did it. I won the NWA Midwest, but so I got to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish, and have a bunch of cool stories from it,
Yeah, I mean, you can say you lived out your dream. That was hard and devastating when Chris passed away. Just what, and he died so
Man,
young too.
I can't begin to tell you because you know it's so my brother grew up just like so clean, so like like wouldn't touch it, never smoked, never drank, never did anything that would impede his performance. The only time the only time he took pills was when he broke his neck in WWF. For the first time he took pills was when he broke his neck in WWF. Mm-hmm. And and maybe I think some people who don't, maybe they don't experiment with drugs when they're younger. If they find them later on in life, maybe they go overboard a little bit, and he did, at times. And I remember he kind of got carried away with it, and his career, like, it was suffering because of it, and other things. And I'll fast forward a little bit to in 2003, he was in Puerto Rico, right? Mm-hmm. And I went out there to meet him in Puerto Rico. And there you can get somas over the counter. And I was doing them too. Like, but like during the day, we would like take walks and talk. And he told me, he's like, dude, he's like, you know what, man? So we were staying at this place, the Empress Hotel, which was right by this building, the Dahlia, where Eddie Gilbert died. He's like, if I'm gonna die, I want to die young, blonde, looking good, leave a good looking corpse. I'm like, dude, don't fucking say that, dude. I'm like, don't, like, like. So when I came back home from Puerto Rico, so up in his old room at our parents' house, I had like taken it over, but I still left his office how it was. And I was just looking, he has every wrestling magazine ever produced. So I was looking through one of them, and I saw like a letter from my Aunt Kathy to like my brother. It said like, I did your laundry and there's lasagna in the refrigerator, something like that. And I was reading it, and like I started getting like emotional. And I remember thinking, like, if I don't do something, like this is not gonna freaking end well. So I remember my brother called me, and I'm like, dude, please come home. Like, fucking come the fuck home, please. And he did, and we ended up I've told the story before, but we were sitting there eating, and he's just telling me, he's like, oh man, the guys on the indies now, they don't train. When I was 17, I was already jacked, looked like a pro athlete. Da, 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 da. I'm like, yeah, dude, like that's why you were a standout. That's why you made it, like. And he just goes, man, he's like, I really fucked everything up. I'm like, no, you didn't. I'm like, you're 32. Let's get back on track. I'm with you now. Let's start hitting the weights hard. Let's fucking get after it. And we did. And he went and he got like medically detoxed, took the pills so he wouldn't have any to get the withdrawal, and he got clean from everything. And he was like that for a year, and he was so fucking happy, and just from the die after that freak accident, you know what I mean? It was so like because there's so many woulda, coulda, shouldas. Like normally I would just go to his house. This is like right after I got back from Florida. But I'm like, yo, dude, what are you doing? He's like, nothing. I'm just like laying, about to go to sleep. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. You want to like watch Goodfellas or something? He's like, yeah, come over if you want. I'm like, oh, but I'm like, if you're just gonna sleep, then I'll pick you up in the morning for breakfast. He's like, all right, yeah, I'm gonna sleep. And then I get a call. He's in the hospital. I'm like, he's in the hospital. What? And it was just it was so shocking. You know what I mean? That it was. So I'm going to, his birthday is March 21st, and I always go somewhere for his birthday. So I'm normally Puerto Rico, so I'm going to go to Puerto Rico this year for his birthday, and hang there. I mean, even though it was a messed up time, we had a lot of fun. Like sometimes it seems like I'm saying like doom and gloom, but the whole time we were like joking through everything, So we had a lot of fun in Puerto Rico, and I just love it there. So I'm going to spend his birthday in Puerto Rico. But what's really cool is, like, he left a legacy with the fans and with his work, but also with a lot of the boys. A lot of today's top guys were huge fans of and later friends of my brothers. Like, I get DMs and texts from people all the time saying, dude, I just have to tell you, like, your brother was the coolest person. I work like him. I think he was the epitome of a professional wrestler. Just he was the greatest because he liked being the guy that, like, my brother was really affable, loved to joke, talk. If and he would want somebody to ask him to like come watch their match, and he would critique them and help them do whatever. He was just a really really super nice guy, and and he loved the business, everything from the ride in the car to the locker room to wrestling to you know he loved it all, and I think that's why we're still talking about him right now. Like, I remember, so a couple of years ago I co-authored a book. There's a book, No Gimmicks Needed, by me and John Cosper, and I started writing it in 2010, and I just started writing like a whole bunch of stories, and I had a couple hundred pages. But what stuck with me was, I remember in like '03, before my brother cleaned his act up, he had left like a, a Von Erich's book on my parents' coffee table, and like one day he was like thumbing through it, and my mom's like, Christopher, is this what's gonna happen to you? You're gonna end up in a coffee table book. And he's like, Mom, if the people still remember me 15 years, 20 years after I'm gone, I'd be overjoyed to be in a coffee table book. So he wanted to leave his mark on this business that he loved so much, and I think he definitely successfully did that, you know.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
that's what I'm out here always, campaigning for him to do, because it's tough to talk about my brother because I miss him and I love him and I miss him. But I'll always go hard for him, and and tell his story, because it's an inspiring story. Like how he came back from what he did, and just like almost overnight.
let's switch gears and talk about the
Okay.
stuff you've done outside of wrestling. You've done a lot of charity work and things in
Oh
your
yeah.
community. Let's talk about some of the organizations that you partnered with.
So like, so one of the big ones that I started. All right, so I'm a big fan of mixed martial arts, and that Francis Ngannou, who's now about to fight Anthony Joshua. Like, he came onto my radar when after he knocked out Alistair Overeem, and then I heard about his journey. You heard? Have you ever heard Francis
Yeah,
Ngannou's story?
yeah, I
How
think
how
I
he,
yeah, I've looked into it, read
he had to
about it.
like he had to like human smuggle himself from
Hmm.
Cameroon all up through northern Africa.
Yeah,
So when I heard all this, and he finally made it, and I saw he put up Francis Ngannou Foundation. He's like, I want to build a gym, so the village that I came from, now these kids will have a gym to train at. I'm like, I'm all in. So I would donate under my name, under um, Bammer's name, my brother's name, and I would like watch. So what they did was, Francis put out a gimmick on Instagram. I know this because I heard the guy on a podcast saying, looking for a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu or MMA coach to volunteer at my gym in Cameroon for a year. So this black belt named Sam from the UK, he volunteered, and long story short, he didn't speak the language, because in Cameroon they speak French. He spoke English, and he didn't know if it was going to work when he first got there, right? But then he started picking up the language, and all the kids started getting really, really good, and you could see their progress getting really, really good. And he would be like, he put up little things for GoFundMe's. He'd be like, I don't want to ask Francis for like any little thing. He's like, but I have bags of clothes and this and that in the UK. So I'm gonna set up a GoFundMe for that. So I would like, hook him up with that. Um, donate to things here and there. And now the guy Sam brought back. He adopted two kids from Cameroon who didn't really have fathers. The one kid Frank, and then there's another. He brought the kid Frank back with him to England to compete in jiu-jitsu as a blue belt originally, and the kid Frank from Cameroon is smashing everyone. Like
wow.
the kid's doing so well, and so he because he adopted him in Cameroon, it doesn't give him the it doesn't translate to him being able to live in England as it would somewhere else. They need to file they have an immigration attorney, and with their long story short, they're trying to get Frank permanent residency there in the UK because they want to start a gym together. So anybody out there who wants to help out, you can go to Sam Crook, SAMCROOK BJJ on Instagram, and there'll be a GoFundMe page there, and that'll link to his son Frank, his adopted son Frank Takaju, and it'll and you can see his jujitsu matches and how this guy is a really exciting jujitsu fighter and just been running through people left and right. And then there's other kids coming up in like Africa right now that are going to be in PFL Africa. Like MMA is becoming really big in Cameroon right now, and I'm really stoked because like I started watching these kids. Like I recently got Instagram, but I would Google like I found out the guy Sam's name, so I'd Google his name, and I'd be able to see like the videos of the kids' progress like through the years. And then I finally got Instagram, and then I started like chatting with some of them because they saw that I was a wrestler, and we started bullshitting. So then I'm just like kind of invested. I want to see these kids like do good, and and be like the next generation of like really great MMA guys.
Yeah.
Because that seems like they all really want to do, and they're all really good at it. Frank especially, this kid Kelvin is like really high level. I think there's 10 blue belts there now, but they also do judo, and the mixed martial arts is getting really big in that part of West Africa. So
yeah.
like that like I'm really stoked about that. So I mean, like I just if there's something that I can feel that I can do, I like to do it. And even on like a personal level of like just helping people out of situations like for example, I'm divorced now, but when I was married, the my ex's family had a house that was the neighborhood used to be all Italian, and then it changed and it was a Hispanic neighborhood, and me and her renovated the house, whatever. So the neighborhood was it was it was a city, so kind of good blocks, bad blocks. There were some guys on the corner that would do their thing. There were kids, but whatever. But there was this one kid who was my neighbor, who was 20 something, you know, didn't he wasn't like a street kid, but he hung out with those kids and always be like, yo, he's like, can I cut your grass for $40? Can I wash your car for $40? One day he's crying. I'm like, what's going on, dude? He's like, he's like, I got a ticket and I don't have the money to pay it. And I'm not going to, and when I don't pay it, I'm going to end up going to freaking jail. And I'm like, dude, let's have a talk here, man. I'm like, I'll give you the $40 or $50 to pay your ticket, but you can't make a living cutting my grass. I'm like, what do you like to do? Like, let's develop a plan here. So we start talking, and he's like, I like being a chef. I like being a cook. I'm like, go down to Hoboken. We were in a town city called Union City. I'm like, go down to Hoboken in Jersey City, start working there, and work your way through. So long story short, I don't see him for a while. I see him maybe 8 months later, and he's like, dude, he's like, after that whole thing, I got my legal situation set. I paid off my ticket. I didn't get arrested. I ended up getting this job right on at this really nice restaurant on the waterfront, and now I'm a line chef, and I want to be I want to be a chef, and I just got my own place on Tunnelly Ave with me and my girl, and we just had a kid. I'm just like shit like that, like I get stoked about, just
Yeah.
like I like helping people. And my brother was the same way. I think that's how. That's probably where I, where I get it from.
Yeah. I mean,
it's definitely important to give back and to help others that are in need. What gives you the most joy when it comes to helping out in your community?
I what I like seeing people be happy and be good and do better, and like, watching people achieve what they wanted to achieve, like, uh, helping. I'm trying to think like how to like phrase it. It's really cool when you get behind someone, and you support them and you help them out, and then you see them go on and achieve what they wanted to, and now they're on a good path, as opposed to where they were before, kind of without you know uh they didn't know where they stood in life,
Right.
and now they're doing better, and they're passionate about something, and they love what they're doing. So I'm not saying that I like go out there and like actively look for people to mentor, but if someone like comes across my path, and sometimes people meet for a reason, and shit ends up working out. It gives me. I'm always the person that, like, for Christmas, I don't give a shit what I get. I'm always like, I have to go Christmas shopping like 3 times, because if I get like my mom, my girl, my sisters something early, I'm always like, oh shit, they're gonna really like it. I'm like, I got you something for Christmas, but you really like it, so have it now. I'll get you something
Yeah.
else. I still have unwrapped Christmas presents, I'm sure, because I don't give a shit. I just like giving shit to people,
Yeah.
But
Gotta
no,
you
I
gotta
that
you got
my
you,
brother was this way, man.
yeah, you gotta sometimes you gotta give to other people that are just in need, and it just in you just gotta do it. It's just good. It's just the right
It's the right
thing.
thing to, yeah, for real. It's the right thing to do, because I feel like a lot of the culture now like feeds off negativity, and it's no good. It's yeah, just put simply, just fucking be nice. Be a
Yeah,
good person. You know
absolutely.
that's that's something, like I said, I mimicked from since I was a kid. I mimicked everything my brother did, and he was such a nice, genuine person. And I like to think of myself as the same way. Like, had he been a scumbag, I probably would have been a scumbag too. But he was always like the coolest person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
And it definitely seemed like he was, and he cared about his fans, and you care about your fans. And
of course.
one
And
of the
well, just about my brother, real quick, like how he was with fans. It was like, say we'd all be like out to eat at a restaurant or whatever, and people would like be looking like, oh, can we have an autograph? He'd be like, hey, he's like, sit down. I order potato skins. I don't even want them. Come hang out with us. You wanted some of this beer? Like, he would like bring like half the freaking restaurant to sit at our table. Like, he was just like one of those kind of people who would, again, and like helping guys at the gym. Like, sometimes at the gym, when it would be like me, my brother, like our other friend who's like all jacked balls, people would kind of like watch what we were doing, and I'd be like, "Yo, you want to work in with us? Like, come on, like let's all work out. Like, come on." Like, he was always like, you know, again, always like helping people, and like passing on the knowledge in the gym, and then of course to like younger wrestlers or anybody who asked him for advice or whatever. He really was one of a kind, man. Like, you know, it's it was really great the time we had together. I still fucking miss him like crazy.
Yeah, he's definitely going to be missed for sure, and I'm grateful that you're still with us to be able to carry on the legacy. And Johnny, I want to say thank you for coming on Wrestling with Heart. It means a lot to me, to the listeners and viewers that are watching this on YouTube. Where can people find you on social media, or if they want to more find out more about you?
Yeah, for some reason on like my Wikipedia, it's spelled JOHNNYCANDIDO, but my name's just Johnny, JONNYCANDIDO. On Twitter, you can just find me at Johnny Candido. I think I'm Candido 118. I think I'm the same on Instagram at Candido 118 or Candido 18. So yeah, find me there. Jonny, JONNY CANDIDO, and I'm on Instagram and I'm on Twitter. I'm new to Instagram, so I'm still kind of getting the hang of it. I
All
think
right.
I've been on 8 months,
Yeah,
but yeah,
you'll get the hang of it, just keep posting stuff, and hopefully the follow you'll get followers, and more people will find you, and they can all reminisce about the good old days and stories of you and your brother. So, just
oh,
keep.
I got a good Twitter following, so I have a ton of I stay in touch with so many guys through there, and then on my phone, I still talk to Sandman, Sabu, a ton of guys, like
Yeah.
not every day, but well, Sabu probably weekly, monthly, bi-monthly. I still talk to a lot of the guys. You
Yeah.
know, Dr. Tom. I was chatting with Lance yesterday. So yeah, man. Those guys are still, just a part of my life. And I talked to Paul London. We share freaking funny videos like freaking 50 times a day on Instagram now.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's
But so,
awesome.
so yeah, wrestling's still like a big part of my life. And Brian Myers too is another guy who was a huge fan, and then a huge friend of my brother. He's a friend of mine. So yeah, I still, I'm still in the wrestling business, repping my brother.
Mhm.
That's what I'm doing because that's what he would have wanted. So I'm happy I could do it for him.
Just carry on the legacy and keep making
Yeah,
him proud and your family proud. Jonny, thanks again, and you're more than welcome to come back.
man. Thanks, brother.
All
Thanks
right,
for having me.
of course, take care. This is Wrestling with Heart. I hope you found this podcast to be informative and entertaining. If you did, please hit the subscribe button and look out for the next edition.